From windswept coastal ruins to grand palaces rising above ancient hills, England's castles are more than stone walls. They are the guardians of 1,000 untold stories. Join us as we journey through England's most iconic strongholds, where history stands tall, and every fortress whispers a tale of power, mystery, and time itself. Bodiam Castle. Imagine approaching a perfect medieval castle rising straight out of a mirror-still moat. Its towers reflected so clearly that you can't tell where stone ends and water begins. That's Bodiam Castle, one of the most picturesque fortresses in all of England. Built in 1385 by Sir Edward Dallingrig, a former knight of Edward III, this castle was constructed not only for defense but also as a statement of prestige and power during the turbulent years of the 100 Years' War. What makes Bodiam fascinating is how it blends military purpose with graceful design. The castle's square layout, complete with round corner towers and a central courtyard, looks ready for battle, yet much of its appearance was crafted for show. Dallingrig wanted a fortress that looked formidable, but also comfortable enough for noble life. Even the moat, though defensive in theory, served more as a symbol of wealth and sophistication. Bodiam was never tested in full-scale war. During the English Civil War, it fell to parliamentary forces but was spared destruction. Stepping inside today, you'll find the ruins of a once bustling household. A great hall for feasts, private chambers, kitchens, and chapels. Today, owned by the National Trust, Bodiam Castle feels like a time capsule of the late medieval world. Not just a fortress, but a symbol of ambition, artistry, and England's enduring love affair with its storied past. Arundel Castle. If you think castles are relics frozen in time, Arundel Castle will surprise you. It's a living fortress, a family home, and a piece of English history that's still very much alive. Perched high above the River Arun in Arundel, West Sussex, this magnificent structure has watched over West Sussex for nearly 1,000 years. Arundel Castle's story begins in 1067, just 1 year after the Norman conquest. It was established by Roger de Montgomery, one of William the Conqueror's most trusted allies, to secure the newly conquered lands of southern England. The original structure was a simple motte and bailey design, but over the centuries, it evolved into one of the grandest castles in Britain. From the Norman keep to the sweeping Gothic Revival architecture added in the 19th century, its towers and battlements reflect Norman power, its ornate interiors speak of Victorian elegance, and its immaculate gardens hint at aristocratic leisure. The castle remains the ancestral home of the Dukes of Norfolk, the most senior noble family in England after the royal family, an unbroken line stretching back centuries. One of Arundel's greatest treasures is its baronial hall, filled with armor, portraits, and relics that tell the tales of those who lived here. The Fitzalan Chapel, attached to the castle, is a masterpiece of medieval design and still serves as the family's burial place. Walking through Arundel feels like stepping into a storybook, one where Norman knights, Tudor nobles, and Victorian lords all left their mark. Rochester Castle. Towering above the River Medway in Rochester in Kent, Rochester Castle is a true Norman masterpiece. A fortress whose great stone keep has stood for over 900 years and remains one of the tallest and most impressive in all of England. It was built soon after the Norman conquest, around 1087, under the order of Bishop Gundulf of Rochester, one of William the Conqueror's trusted engineers. Gundulf was also responsible for parts of the Tower of London, and his genius shows here, in the precision of the masonry and the boldness of the design. Rochester's keep soars nearly 113 feet high, with walls over 12 feet thick, a formidable statement of Norman power. From its battlements, you can gaze over the Medway Valley and imagine the centuries of warfare it has witnessed. The castle's most dramatic episode came during the siege of 1215, when rebellious barons held Rochester against King John. After fierce fighting, the king's forces mined beneath the tower and used pig fat to fuel a fire that caused one corner of the keep to collapse. Yet even that couldn't fully bring it down. The damaged section was later rebuilt, and the keep still stands remarkably solid today. Through the centuries, Rochester Castle has weathered wars, neglect, and time, but it remains a symbol of medieval engineering at its finest. The contrast between its stark stone walls and the nearby Rochester Cathedral creates one of the most evocative historic skylines in England. Visiting Rochester feels like stepping into a living chapter of Norman ambition. Hever Castle. High on a hilltop overlooking the Vale of Belvoir in Leicestershire stands one of England's most romantic and luxurious castles. From a distance, it looks like something out of a fairy tale, with its turrets and towers glowing golden in the sun. But behind the beauty lies centuries of history, art, and aristocratic life. The original castle was built shortly after the Norman conquest, around 1067, by Robert de Todini, a loyal follower of William the Conqueror. However, the structure we see today is largely the result of 19th century rebuilding under Elizabeth Manners, the Duchess of Rutland, who transformed the medieval ruins into a masterpiece of Regency Gothic revival design. The castle's name means beautiful view in French, and it truly lives up to it. The surrounding landscape stretches for miles, with manicured gardens and rolling countryside forming part of its charm. Inside, the state dining room and the Regency Library are masterpieces of artistry, often compared to royal palaces for their grandeur. Hever Castle has also had a cinematic life. It's been used as a filming location for The Crown, Young Victoria, and other period dramas, standing in for Windsor Castle. For centuries, Hever has been home to the Dukes of Rutland, a family deeply woven into Britain's noble history. Unlike many castles, it remains privately owned and lived in, a rare example of an English stately home that continues to evolve while preserving its regal past. Warkworth Castle. From the moment you see it, Warkworth Castle seems to rise naturally from the hill above the River Coquet in Warkworth in Northumberland, a commanding presence that has watched over Northumberland for more than 8 centuries. Once the stronghold of the powerful Percy family, the Earls of Northumberland, this castle embodies the turbulent story of England's northern frontier. The first stone fortress was likely built in the 12th century, though earlier wooden defenses may have stood here even before the Norman era. By the late 1300s, Henry Percy, known as Hotspur, one of the most famous knights of his time, had transformed Warkworth into a great fortified residence. During the Wars of the Roses, Warkworth became a symbol of loyalty and rebellion, occupied, besieged, and restored multiple times. Even as the centuries wore on and warfare changed, the castle remained a symbol of the Percy lineage's endurance. Just a short walk away lies the Hermitage, a small chapel carved directly into the riverbank rock, once used for private worship. Today, Warkworth's weathered stones still carry whispers of honor, betrayal, and devotion. Alnwick Castle. If you feel like you've seen Alnwick Castle before, even if you've never visited, you probably have. Its soaring towers and golden stone walls have starred in films from Harry Potter to Downton Abbey. But long before the cameras arrived, Alnwick had already played starring roles in England's own drama. Located in Northumberland, Castle was founded in 1096. Alnwick was built to defend northern England from Scottish invasion. It became the ancestral seat of the Percy family, one of the most powerful dynasties in the land, and they've lived here for over 700 years, a lineage almost unmatched in Britain. The castle's outer defenses are formidable, with battlements and towers that overlook the River Aln. But step inside, and you'll find a transformation. Yet the castle never lost its military spirit. Its walls still seem ready to repel a charge, even as its gardens invite quiet reflection. Today, Alnwick is alive with both history and imagination. It's home to the Duke of Northumberland, but also to one of the country's most enchanting gardens, and to the timeless magic that has made it a cinematic icon. Alnwick Castle is a living fusion of legend, nobility, and fantasy. Hever Castle. If romance had an address, it would be Hever Castle. Nestled beside a tranquil moat and surrounded by exquisite gardens in Edenbridge in Kent, this picturesque fortress was once the childhood home of Anne Boleyn, the ill-fated second wife of King Henry VIII. The story of Hever begins in the 13th century, when it was built as a simple country house. Around 1383, it was converted into a fortified manor by William de Hever, featuring the charming drawbridge and gatehouse that still survive today. But it was during the Tudor era that Hever's true legacy was written. In the early 1500s, the Boleyn family acquired the estate, and it became a hub of courtly intrigue. Within these walls, young Anne Boleyn spent her formative years before catching the eye of Henry VIII, a romance that would alter the course of English history and lead to the English Reformation itself. After Anne's tragic downfall, Hever passed to Anne of Cleves, Henry's fourth wife, as part of her divorce settlement. Centuries later, in the early 1900s, the castle was lovingly restored by William Waldorf Astor, the wealthy American financier, who transformed it into a romantic Tudor dream, complete with ornamental gardens and a vast lake. Hever Castle is more than a monument. It's a story carved in stone, of passion, power, and tragedy that still resonates through England's history. Nunney Castle. Located in Somerset, this small but striking castle looks like a perfect miniature of a French fortress. Complete with 4 cylindrical corner towers, machicolations, and a wide, shimmering moat that seems to float it upon the water. Despite its modest scale, its grand chateaux he'd seen in France, de la Mare constructed Nunney not only as a defensive manor but also as a display of status and taste. Its design is remarkably symmetrical. A compact square keep with graceful towers rising from each corner. The moat, still full today. But this little castle did see violence. During the English Civil War, it was held for the Royalists until parliamentarian troops besieged it in 1645. The defenders surrendered only after cannon fire breached the walls. You can still see the scar where the shot hit. Lincoln Castle. Perched on a hill in Lincoln that once held a Roman fortress, Lincoln Castle stands as a proud guardian of nearly 1,000 years of English history. Built in 1068 by William the Conqueror, it was one of the first major Norman strongholds erected after his victory at Hastings, a powerful symbol that Norman rule had arrived to stay. From above, Lincoln Castle is strikingly oval, its curtain walls enclosing a double motte, an unusual design that shows how early Norman engineers experimented with fortification. Within its walls, kings have gathered armies, rebels have risen in defiance, and justice has been dispensed for centuries. One of the most extraordinary treasures housed here is the Magna Carta, sealed by King John in 1215. Lincoln Castle's copy is one of only 4 originals surviving today, preserved in the castle's Victorian prison, itself a fascinating piece of history. The prison, operational until the late 19th century, was designed with a strict, separate system to keep inmates isolated even during worship. During the medieval period, Lincoln Castle was a strategic military base. It endured multiple sieges, including one during the First Barons' War in 1217, when the city saw fierce fighting between royal and rebel forces. Today, you can walk the complete castle walls, offering one of the most spectacular panoramic views in England, over the city's red rooftops and the soaring spires of Lincoln Cathedral, once the tallest building in the world. Carlisle Castle. At England's northern frontier in Cumbria, Carlisle Castle has seen more battles than almost any other in the land. For 9 turbulent centuries, it has stood as a sentinel between England and Scotland. Built by William II, the son of William the Conqueror, around 1092, the castle was erected on the site of an old Roman fort guarding the River Eden. Its location made it one of the most strategically important strongholds in medieval Britain. Carlisle's story is one of endless warfare. It changed hands repeatedly between the English and the Scots, captured by David I of Scotland in 1135, reclaimed by the English soon after, and besieged countless times during the border wars. It was even attacked during the Jacobite Rising of 1745, when Bonnie Prince Charlie's forces briefly took control before the castle fell once more to the crown. Architecturally, Carlisle Castle retains its rugged Norman core. The massive keep still dominates the skyline, with thick sandstone walls designed to withstand siege. Dartmouth Castle. This castle guards one of England's prettiest harbors, a fortress born not from conquest, but from the ingenuity of coastal defense. Located in Devon for over 600 years, it has protected Devon's shores and the merchant ships that once made this town rich. Construction began around 1388, under John Hawley, a local merchant and privateer who inspired Chaucer's shipmen in the Canterbury Tales. Hawley and the townsfolk built this castle to defend against French raids during the 100 Years' War, when England's southern coasts were under constant threat. Unlike most castles built for feudal lords, Dartmouth was designed for artillery warfare, a rare example of early Gunpowder Age architecture. It features a gun tower that once bristled with cannons aimed across the estuary, and later improvements in the 15th century allowed for coordinated defense with a chain that could be stretched across the river mouth to block enemy ships. Inside, stone stairways wind through compact chambers once filled with cannon smoke, supplies, and garrison life. During the English Civil War, Dartmouth changed hands between royalists and parliamentarians. Yet despite centuries of storms and conflict, it remains remarkably well preserved. Dunster Castle. Set atop a wooded hill with sweeping views of Exmoor and the Bristol Channel, Dunster Castle feels like something out of a period drama, and indeed, its story spans nearly 1,000 years of English history. Located in Dunster in Somerset, it was originally built as a Norman motte and bailey soon after 1066. The castle was later transformed into a luxurious country residence, blending medieval fortifications with Georgian elegance. The first stone keep was erected by the de Mohun family, but by the late 14th century, it had passed to the Luttrells, who would own it for more than 600 years. During the English Civil War, Dunster became a royalist stronghold. It endured a fierce siege in 1645 before surrendering to parliamentary forces, one of the last in Somerset to fall. Despite the turmoil, the castle was never destroyed, and later centuries saw it evolve into a stately home rather than a fortress. Architecturally, Dunster is a fascinating fusion. Medieval towers still crown the hilltop, but the interiors gleam with 17th and 18th century refinement. Grand staircases, paneled rooms, and portraits of generations of Luttrells. Middleham Castle. In the heart of Yorkshire's rolling dales stands Middleham Castle, a fortress that once shaped the destiny of kings. Though today it lies in ruin, these rugged walls were once home to one of England's most complex and tragic monarchs, Richard III. The first fortress on this site was built shortly after the Norman conquest, but the impressive stone castle we see today dates from the 12th century, constructed by Robert Fitzrandolph, a powerful Norman baron. It was later expanded by the mighty Neville family, one of the wealthiest and most influential dynasties in medieval England. Within these walls, young Richard, Duke of Gloucester, the future King Richard III, spent his formative years under the guardianship of the Earl of Warwick, the Kingmaker. During the Wars of the Roses, Middleham stood at the crossroads of royal ambition and rebellion. When Richard became king in 1483, it was from here that he ruled much of the north. Portchester Castle. Overlooking the glistening waters of Portsmouth Harbour, In Hampshire, Portchester Castle is one of the most extraordinary fortresses in Britain. The story of Portchester begins in the 3rd century AD, when Roman engineers built a vast walled stronghold here, known as Portus Aderni, to defend the coast from Saxon pirates. Those original Roman walls, some of the best preserved in northern Europe, still form the castle's outer defenses today, enclosing nearly 9 acres of land. After the Norman conquest, William the Conqueror's followers transformed the Roman site into a medieval fortress, adding a powerful stone keep and inner bailey. Its location by the sea made it an ideal staging ground for invasions. Henry V set sail from here for the Battle of Agincourt in 1415. During the Napoleonic Wars, it held thousands of captured French soldiers, whose carvings can still be found in the walls. From its battlements, you can see centuries of English defense unfold, Roman to royal, ancient to modern. Deal Castle. Imagine a fortress shaped like a flower, 6 great petals surrounding a central tower, each petal bristling with cannons. That's Deal Castle, one of the most distinctive fortresses ever built in England. Constructed between 1539 and 1540, also under King Henry VIII, Deal was part of his Grand Coastal Defense Plan, the same program that produced Street Maws, Walmer, and other device forts. At the time, England faced the threat of invasion from a united France and the Holy Roman Empire. Deal's design is pure gunpowder age geometry. The central tower and 6 semicircular bastions form a symmetrical rose pattern. Each level of the castle was fitted with artillery, capable of unleashing devastating crossfire on approaching ships. Built from durable Kentish stone and brick, its walls were thick enough to absorb cannon impact, while its low, rounded shape deflected enemy fire. Although Deal never saw a major battle, it played an important defensive role through the centuries and later served as a barracks and lookout post during both World Wars. Lancaster Castle. Behind the thick sandstone walls of Lancaster Castle lies one of England's darkest and most compelling stories. For over 900 years, this fortress has served as a royal stronghold, a seat of justice, and most chillingly, one of the country's most notorious prisons. Built around 1093 on the site of a Roman fort, the castle's first stone structure was erected by Roger de Poitou, a Norman baron and ally of William the Conqueror. Over the centuries, it expanded into a complex fortress with imposing towers, dungeons, and courtrooms, a blend of military might and legal authority. The castle's most famous chapter came in 1612, during the Lancashire witch trials. Here, 10 accused witches were sentenced to death. Architecturally, Lancaster Castle is a powerful example of Norman and later Gothic styles, with its well tower also known as the Witch's Tower and the Gatehouse, one of the best preserved medieval gateways in Britain. Incredibly, Lancaster Castle remained an active prison until 2011, making it one of the longest used castles in Europe. Today, you can explore the eerie prison blocks, ancient chapels, and courtrooms where history was written, sometimes in blood and fear. Tintagel Castle. High above the Atlantic, on a rugged Cornish headland lashed by wind and wave, stand the haunting ruins of Tintagel Castle, one of the most magical and mysterious sites in all of Britain. According to ancient myth, Tintagel was the birthplace of King Arthur, the legendary ruler of Camelot. The tale, first written by Geoffrey of Monmouth in the 12th century, turned this remote clifftop into the heart of Arthurian romance. But Tintagel's true story is just as fascinating. Archaeological discoveries show that it was once a powerful Dark Age stronghold, trading with distant lands like Byzantium. Later, in the 13th century, Richard, Earl of Cornwall, built the castle whose ruins now cling to the cliffs. He deliberately evoked Arthur's legend, blending history and myth for prestige and symbolism. The architecture, split dramatically between mainland and island, is both daring and poetic. The new footbridge, built in 2019, reconnects the two halves, echoing the original medieval crossing and offering breathtaking views over the roaring sea. Walking among Tintagel's ruins feels like stepping into another world, one where sea mist carries whispers of knights, kings, and ancient magic. Whether you come for the legend or the landscape, Tintagel never fails to cast its spell. Dunstanburgh Castle. Few castles in England are as dramatically placed as Dunstanburgh Castle, standing isolated on a rugged headland between the fishing villages of Craster and Embleton in Northumberland. Its ruins, battered by centuries of North Sea wind and salt, create one of the most hauntingly beautiful silhouettes on the English coast. The castle was built in 1313 by Thomas, Earl of Lancaster. Thomas hoped Dunstanburgh's remote coastal cliffs would make it both a refuge and a statement of independence from King Edward II. Thomas never lived to see his creation completed. He was executed for treason just a few years later. During the Wars of the Roses, Dunstanburgh became a Yorkist stronghold and saw fierce sieges, but by the 16th century, it was largely abandoned, its stones slowly surrendering to time and tide. The castle's setting is its greatest glory. To approach Dunstanburgh, you walk a windswept path along the cliffs, waves crashing below and seabirds circling overhead. The ruins seem to emerge from the landscape like a mirage, lonely, majestic, and eternal. Goodrich Castle. On a hill above the River Wye in Herefordshire, surrounded by lush forest, stands Goodrich Castle, often called one of the finest and most complete Norman castles in England. It perfectly blends the harshness of war with the beauty of the English countryside. Goodrich began as a simple Norman keep in the late 11th century, built by an English thane named Godric, from whom the castle takes its name. Over time, it grew into a magnificent fortress, particularly under William de Valence, a French nobleman and half-brother to Henry III. By the 13th century, Goodrich had been transformed into a luxurious and heavily fortified residence. Its massive red sandstone walls, deep moat, and gatehouse were built not just for defense but to impress. The castle's most famous moment came during the English Civil War, when it was held by royalists before being besieged by parliamentarian forces in 1646. After fierce cannon bombardment, the castle fell, marking one of the final royalist defeats in the region. Despite centuries of decay, Goodrich remains remarkably intact. Its towers, stairways, and battlements invite exploration, and the view across the Wye Valley is breathtaking. Nottingham Castle. Perched high on a sandstone cliff, Nottingham Castle rises as if born from the rock itself, a fortress shaped by nature long before kings claimed it. Built in 1068 by William the Conqueror, it guarded the Midlands with a strategic view over the River Trent. Through the Middle Ages, it became a center of royal power, rebellion, and fierce political rivalries. King John, forever linked to the legend of Robin Hood, ruled from its halls. In 1330, the young Edward III launched his daring nighttime assault through a secret tunnel, now known as Mortimer's Hole, to overthrow his regent. This bold coup changed the course of English history. The medieval fortress later fell during the English Civil War, when Parliament ordered it demolished. In the 1670s, a Grand Ducal Palace rose on the same site, replacing turrets with elegant classical architecture. But unrest struck again in 1831, when rioters burned the palace during protests for political reform. Restored and reopened in 1878, it became one of Britain's earliest public museums. Beneath it lies a hidden world of 800 man-made caves, carved for storage, brewing, shelter, and escape. From its terraces, the entire city of Nottingham stretches out below. Every stone, tunnel, and chamber tells a different era's story. And that wraps up our journey through some of the most majestic castles in England. Which of these castles is at the top of your travel bucket list? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your picks. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more adventures to the world's most amazing places. Thanks for watching. See you on the next journey. Until then, happy travels.